This realization is one of the biggest lessons learned from our generations of combat leaders, both in the SEAL teams and throughout U.S. military branches. Through the years of combat in Iraq and Afghanistan, there is no 100% right solution. The picture is never complete. Leaders must be comfortable with this and be able to make decisions promptly, then be ready to adjust those decisions quickly based on evolving situations and new information. Intelligence gathering and research are important, but they must be employed with realistic expectations and must not impede swift decision making that is often the difference between victory and defeat. Waiting for the 100% right and certain solution leads to delay, indecision, and an inability to execute. Today I want to discuss the case for 165-pound division. Now, I'm talking specifically in the UFC, because if the UFC were to be the first to adopt the 165-pound division, it would be the leader in this category. For an MMA, there is a very restricted amount of weight classes which are able to be participated in. So you have some weight classes that are more designed for smaller people and some weight classes more designed for heavier people. Now, obviously, this does lead to some complications since the UFC is the world leader in mixed martial arts and it is considered a leader in the sense what the UFC does and what it practices will be the standard upon which other organizations will be judged. So therefore, we have to start with the UFC and we have to look at it for the change needed for the 165-pound division to be used properly. Now here, we have a list of current fighters per Bloody Elbow. It was updated January 29th, 2013, according to this article. However, if you look down, you will actually see that they've updated it fairly recently. So I'm not too sure how accurate this is. This is from Bloody Elbow. I did Google it, and this is what popped up. So we're just going to assume that this is correct. According to this, the heavyweight division in the UFC has 41 signed and rostered fighters. The light heavyweight has 51 fighters. The middleweights have 53 fighters. And of course, this is where the big news comes in. The welterweights at 88 fighters. And of course, lightweights at 89 fighters. Now, yes, they do have more fighters down below, such as the featherweights with 67 and the women's featherweights, but that's a little bit different of a situation. That's obviously not correct. I'm not sure how often they update this, but 72 fighters for the bantamweights. So it's pretty clear that the lighter weight people are the most signed in the organization. Now, what I'm curious about is if this is true, then you clearly have the volume for a 165-pound division in between 170 and 155. Now, it's true that you could move 170 to 175, but that would be unfair and incorrect. For the 170-pound division brought us the likes of Matt Hughes and George St. Pierre. Obviously, those two are huge figures in mixed martial arts, both contemporary and in the historical sense, since they were so dominant and so victorious. The 170-pound division was such a big draw for mixed martial arts for so long. So how could you say that you can move this weight? This is a historical weight, and it must be preserved for future generations. However, 165, although 5 pounds different, does make a difference. You have notable fighters from both welterweight and from lightweight, which could succeed more accurately in a 165-pound division, or could create some interesting matchups between welterweights and lightweights. Now, obviously, the biggest way to start the 165-pound division is to take currently rostered fighters for the welterweight and lightweight and fill in the ranks. So you can see that the average fighter per division seems to be around 50, maybe no more than 60, but let's just say the average is 50. At 88 and 89 fighters respectively, you could effectively take 30 fighters from each division and have a very, very competitive and very respectable 165-pound division. This could be initiated by one of the biggest cards of all time in the UFC, should they make this happen. And in my opinion, it should obviously be Conor McGregor versus Cowboy Cerrone. this would be the grandest way to open up a 165-pound division. It would forever cement both Donald Cowboy Cerrone and Conor McGregor, two figures which have encapsulated what the UFC essentially is. You can either be A, a workhorse, or B, a moneymaker. Obviously, everyone wants to be the moneymaker, and I'm not saying that Donald Cerrone is not a moneymaker. However, he is a known workhorse as the most prolific fighter in the Zuffa history. Cowboy Cerrone has earned a title shot. He has not many fights left, and he admits this openly. Conor McGregor will fight for no less than a title or for legacy. This is the perfect matchup for both of these fighters, since they both crave a title shot, and a 165-pound division would open up possibilities that all sorts of fighters could be intrigued by, such as Tyron Woodley versus Conor McGregor, such as Damian Maia versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. There's so many different ways to spin this. 165 simply makes sense, not only from a fan perspective, but also from a monetary perspective. You clearly have the roster in both the welterweight and lightweight to spare some fighters and still be accurate in terms of averages. You would still have your correct amount of averages, and you would bring in an entirely new crop of fighters that can succeed even better under this new 165-pound weight division. It would be a fascinating turn for mixed martial arts to introduce a brand new weight class into its own ranks. Now, you may be saying 5 pounds is not enough of a difference for there to be a new weight class introduced. It should be somewhere around 7.5. The fan in me agrees with that statement, but something about seeing odd numbers nobody likes. Nobody likes to see odd numbers. Nobody wants to see a 0.5 of a pound. Everybody wants to see even numbers, 5 and 0. 5 isn't an even number, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's very easily divisible. It's very simple. I don't want complicated. I want 165. I do not want 162.5. I don't want 160. I want 165. This is the most accurate division to make. It is possibly the most exciting division to make. It is one of the biggest shakeups that the UFC could possibly do in its near future, and it would shake the foundation of mixed martial arts, considering that 5 pounds could be a new standard for weight divisions to be introduced. This could introduce the possibility of a 195-pound division. It could introduce the possibility of a 225-pound division. It could introduce the possibility of new weight classes in between 145 and 155. There's so many possibilities for this to happen, and no one is saying that this is a bad idea. Yes, it is still a growing sport, and yes, it does have to evolve naturally into its own state, but I think that today is the greatest opportunity for a 165-pound division to be had. At these numbers, it would be insane, and there's no way you could not make it profitable, considering that you could have Conor McGregor go out with a legacy fight, because I believe his next fight could be his last. Same thing with Donald Cerrone. Both of these fighters have both earned a title shot. Yes, Conor McGregor did get smoked in his last fight. Now, honestly, I thought he did really well, considering the fact that he had been out for 2 years, going against an undefeated fighter and one of the most dominant fighters of all time. He did really well, in my opinion. Considering that, he has done more for the sport in terms of getting sheer amount of eyes to himself, and therefore getting sheer amount of eyes into the sport. He has put mixed martial arts onto the mainstream as only a few fighters have, and I think that does warrant him the ability to ask and or demand a title shot. Now, I don't think he deserves it at 155. It's clear to me that he will never beat Khabib as it stands right now. There's just too much of a difference in grappling, and the difference in grappling causes a huge mismatch on the feet, and it just creates a very awkward timing, and it's obvious that this may not be an endeavor that would be profitable for Conor McGregor or the UFC to continue on. However, 165 does introduce new possibilities, and honestly, I think Georges St. Pierre would come out of retirement for a 165-pound division. then he would be able to fight a Conor McGregor. That there's no way he wouldn't. There's just no way he wouldn't. There's so many possibilities for a 165-pound division that it's silly to not have this. It's coming. It has to come. There's no way it shouldn't come. And you clearly have the roster for it. You clearly have the ability to do it. And you clearly have the fighters who want to do it. There's zero reason to not introduce a 165-pound division. However, if I'm wrong, please let me know. I did open up this video with a chapter from Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, and I want to state that the leadership in this is critical. Without that, there is no possibility for the future of this division, and therefore there is no possibility of a huge, massive shakeup in the mixed martial arts arena. I hope this happens. I hope as a fan of both Conor McGregor and Donald Cerrone that this happens. I'm a fan of mixed martial arts. I'm a fan of how dedicated someone can be towards their art. It's something amazing to watch. It's something dedicated. Someone dedicated to their craft is something amazing to watch. And I am truly hopeful that this video reaches the right audience in order to sign whatever it is that's needed to sign in order to create this division. Peace out, y'all.